Rachel's hands tremble as she stares at the phone. The lab results are back. Animal blood, avian species. Her 7-year-old daughter's dress is evidence now. But when police search the church basement, they find nothing. The beloved Sunday school teacher smiles calmly, showing photos that prove she's innocent. Or does she? Before we dive in, comment where in the world you are watching from, and don't forget to click subscribe. The fluorescent lights of the church basement flickered as Rachel Morrison checked her watch for the 3rd time in as many minutes. 6:15. Bible study should have ended at 6. She could hear the muffled sounds of children's voices singing through the heavy wooden door, and she forced herself to take a breath, reminding herself that Mrs. Patterson often ran a few minutes late when the kids were particularly engaged. Still, something felt off today. Rachel couldn't name it, couldn't point to any specific thing, but the sensation sat in her stomach like a stone. When the door finally swung open, children poured out in a chaos of backpacks and laughter. Rachel scanned the crowd for her daughter, her eyes moving over each small face until she spotted the honey blonde hair she'd braided that morning. 7-year-old Lily was one of the last to emerge, walking slowly, her Disney princess backpack dragging on the ground behind her instead of perched on her shoulders where it belonged. "Baby girl!" Rachel called out, waving. But Lily didn't look up. She kept her eyes fixed on the linoleum floor, her steps small and shuffling. Rachel's chest tightened. She moved through the dispersing crowd of parents and children, her sneakers squeaking against the polished floor. When she reached Lily, Rachel crouched down to eye level, ready to ask what was wrong, but the words died in her throat. Her daughter's yellow sundress, the one with the white daisies that Lily had begged to wear that morning, was covered in dark reddish-brown stains. They were smeared across the front, concentrated around the chest and stomach area, with smaller spatters on the skirt. "Lily, what happened? Are you hurt?" Rachel's hands flew to her daughter's arms, turning them gently, checking for injuries. Her heart hammered against her ribs. The stains looked like blood. So much blood. Lily finally looked up, and Rachel's breath caught. Her daughter's green eyes were rimmed with red, her face pale and drawn in a way that made her look older, almost ancient. "I didn't mean to, Mommy," she whispered, her voice barely audible over the remaining chatter in the hallway. "Didn't mean to what, sweetheart?" "Tell Mommy what happened." Rachel's voice cracked despite her efforts to stay calm. She ran her fingers over the stains, and they felt tacky, not quite dry. Her mind raced through possibilities, each one worse than the last. Had someone hurt her baby? Had there been an accident? Why hadn't Mrs. Patterson called her? "I couldn't stop it," Lily said, and tears began streaming down her cheeks. "I tried, Mommy. I tried so hard." Rachel pulled her daughter into her arms, feeling the small body trembling against her own. Over Lily's shoulder, she could see Mrs. Patterson herding the last few stragglers toward the exit, laughing at something one of the boys had said. The older woman hadn't even glanced in their direction. How could she not have noticed? How could she have let Lily leave like this? "Let's get you to the car, okay?" Rachel said, forcing steadiness into her voice even as her hands shook. She picked up the fallen backpack and took Lily's hand, which felt ice cold despite the warm June evening. As they walked toward the parking lot, Rachel glanced back at the church basement door, now closed. Tomorrow she would demand answers. Tonight she needed to get Lily home, get her cleaned up, figure out where all this blood had come from. But as they stepped into the fading sunlight, Rachel noticed something that stopped her cold. The stains on Lily's dress weren't just on the front. There were drops on her white sandals, small spots on her bare legs. And when Lily shifted, Rachel saw smears on her hands too, dried and dark under her fingernails. "Lily, baby, I need you to tell me exactly what happened." Rachel knelt on the hot asphalt, not caring about the stones digging into her knees. "Did someone hurt you? Did you fall? Please, sweetheart, talk to Mommy." Lily's tears came harder now, her small chest heaving with sobs. "It was the bird, Mommy. The bird wouldn't stop bleeding." "What bird?" Rachel's mind struggled to make sense of this. "What are you talking about?" "Mrs. Patterson said we were going to learn about sacrifice," Lily said between gasping breaths. "Like in the Old Testament. She said we needed to understand what it really meant. So she brought the bird. A chill ran down Rachel's spine despite the warm air. What did Mrs. Patterson do with the bird, Lily? But Lily had started crying too hard to answer, her words dissolving into incoherent sounds. Rachel gathered her daughter up and carried her to their Honda Civic, fumbling with the keys as Lily buried her face in her shoulder. Once Lily was buckled into her booster seat, Rachel climbed into the driver's seat but didn't start the engine. She pulled out her phone, her finger hovering over the screen. She should call her husband, David. He'd know what to do. He always knew what to do. But he was 3 hours away on a business trip, and what could he do from Columbus except worry? She could call the church office, demand to speak to Pastor Williams, but it was past 6:30 now. The office would be closed. Rachel looked at her daughter in the rearview mirror. Lily had her thumb in her mouth, something she hadn't done since she was 4. Her eyes stared blankly out the window, unfocused and distant. Those stains covered her like evidence of something Rachel's mind refused to fully grasp. Mrs. Patterson had been teaching children's Bible study at Riverside Community Church for 15 years. She was a grandmother, a retired elementary school teacher. She baked cookies for every holiday. She'd taught Rachel herself when Rachel was a child attending this same church. The idea that she would do something to harm a child, to traumatize them, seemed impossible. But Lily's dress told a different story, and Lily's face, pale and shocked, told another. Rachel's hands trembled as she scrolled through her phone contacts. She paused at Dr. Singh's number, Lily's pediatrician, but it was after hours. The answering service would just tell her to go to urgent care if it was an emergency. Was this an emergency? Lily wasn't physically injured, as far as Rachel could tell, but emotionally, something had happened in that church basement. Something that had left her vibrant, chatty daughter reduced to this silent, shaking child. She selected David's number and pressed call. It rang 4 times before going to voicemail. He was probably in the dinner meeting he'd mentioned that morning, the one with the potential investors. Rachel's thumb hovered over the screen, considering whether to leave a message, when Lily spoke from the back seat. She made me hold it, Mommy. Rachel twisted in her seat to face her daughter. Made you hold what, baby? The bird. When she cut it, Lily's voice was flat now, emotionless, which somehow frightened Rachel more than the crying had. She said we all had to take turns. She said it was how people used to worship God. She said we needed to feel the weight of sacrifice. The stone in Rachel's stomach turned to ice. She thought of the other children she'd seen leaving the church, laughing and joking with their parents. Had they all participated in whatever had happened? Had they all been made to hold a dying bird? Or had Lily been singled out somehow? Did all the kids have to hold it? Rachel asked, trying to keep her voice gentle despite the rage building in her chest. Lily shook her head. Just me and Tyler. Mrs. Patterson said, we were the only ones old enough to understand. The other kids got to play in the other room. Tyler. Rachel knew that name. Tyler Chen, a boy from Lily's Sunday school class. His mother, Jennifer, had waved to Rachel in the parking lot just last week. Rachel needed to call her. But first, she needed to understand the full scope of what had happened. Where did Mrs. Patterson get the bird? Rachel asked. She brought it in a cage. A white dove, she said, like the Holy Spirit. Lily's eyes finally focused on Rachel's face. It was so pretty, Mommy. I didn't want to hurt it. But Mrs. Patterson said it was already going to die anyway. She said it had a purpose. Rachel's vision blurred with tears she fought to hold back. She couldn't fall apart. Not now. Lily needed her to be strong, to be calm, to fix this. But how do you fix something like this? How do you undo the memory of being forced to hold a dying animal? How do you explain to a 7-year-old that the woman who taught her about Jesus' love had just traumatized her in his name? I'm going to make this right, baby, Rachel said, though she had no idea how. You didn't do anything wrong, okay? You understand that? Nothing that happened was your fault. Lily nodded, but Rachel could see she didn't quite believe it. The guilt was already taking root. The shame of having been part of something she instinctively knew was wrong. Rachel recognized it in the way Lily wouldn't meet her eyes, in the way she held herself so still. as if trying to disappear. Rachel started the engine. She needed to get Lily home, get her cleaned up, maybe give her something to eat, even though the thought of food made Rachel's own stomach turn. Then she needed to figure out her next move. Call the church? Call the police? Would the police even take this seriously? It wasn't illegal to kill a bird, was it? But to make children participate, to traumatize them in the name of religious education, surely that crossed some line. The drive home took 8 minutes, but it felt like hours. Rachel kept glancing in the rearview mirror at Lily, who sat motionless, staring out the window with that same blank expression. When they pulled into the driveway of their small brick ranch house, Lily made no move to unbuckle herself. "Come on, sweetheart. Let's get you inside and into the bath." Rachel opened the back door and reached for the buckle, but Lily flinched away from her touch. The small movement felt like a knife to Rachel's heart. Her daughter had never recoiled from her before. "I'm dirty," Lily whispered. "I can't get clean. I tried washing my hands at church, but it won't come off." Rachel looked at Lily's hands, at the dried blood caked under her fingernails and in the creases of her palms. "We'll get you clean, baby. I promise. Let's go inside." This time Lily allowed Rachel to unbuckle her and lift her out of the car. She felt lighter than she should, as if something essential had been hollowed out of her. Rachel carried her daughter up the front steps, fumbling with the keys as Lily clung to her neck. Inside, the house felt too quiet, too normal. The breakfast dishes were still in the sink where Rachel had left them that morning. Lily's coloring books were spread across the coffee table from before they'd left for church. Everything was exactly as they'd left it, but nothing would ever be the same. Rachel carried Lily straight to the bathroom and set her on the closed toilet seat. "I'm going to start the bath, okay? Nice and warm, just how you like it." She turned on the faucet and tested the water temperature, adding a generous squirt of Lily's favorite lavender bubble bath. The familiar scent filled the small bathroom, and for just a moment, Rachel could pretend this was any other evening. But then she looked at Lily, still sitting motionless in that stained dress, and reality crashed back down. "Let's get this dress off," Rachel said gently. She reached for the zipper, and this time Lily didn't flinch. She stood mechanically, allowing Rachel to slide the soiled dress off her shoulders. Rachel tried not to look at the stains too closely as she let the dress fall to the floor. She'd bag it later, though she wasn't sure why. Evidence? Of what exactly? As Lily stepped into the bath, Rachel noticed more smears on her back. Not blood this time, but what looked like dirt or ash. Had there been more to this ritual than just the bird? Had Mrs. Patterson made them do something else? "Was there anything else, sweetheart? Besides the bird?" Rachel asked as she gently washed Lily's hair, her fingers working through the tangles. Lily was quiet for so long that Rachel thought she might not answer. Then, in that same flat voice, she said, "She burned it after, in a metal bowl. She said the smoke carried prayers to heaven. She made us breathe in the smoke and say a prayer. It smelled bad, Mommy. It made me cough." Rachel's hand stilled in Lily's hair. She felt dizzy suddenly, like the bathroom was tilting. This wasn't just poor judgment or a misguided lesson. This was something else entirely. Something calculated and deliberate. Mrs. Patterson had planned this, had brought the bird and the cage and the metal bowl and whatever else she'd needed for this twisted ceremony. "I need to make a phone call, okay, baby?" Rachel said, trying to keep her voice steady. "Can you finish washing while I do that? I'll be right in the hallway." Lily nodded, and Rachel forced herself to leave the bathroom, pulling the door mostly closed, but not latching it. In the hallway, she leaned against the wall and pulled out her phone. Her hands shook so badly that it took 3 tries to dial. When the ringing started, she counted each tone, willing someone to pick up. 1 ring, 2, 3, 4. "This is Jennifer Chen." The voice was cheerful, distracted. Rachel could hear a television in the background. "Jennifer, hi. It's Rachel Morrison, Lily's mom." Rachel fought to keep her voice calm. "Is Tyler home? Was he at Bible study tonight?" "Oh, hi, Rachel." "Yes. He got home about half an hour ago." "Why? Did Lily forget something?" Rachel closed her eyes. Did Tyler seem okay when you picked him up? There was a pause. The background noise on the other end of the line quieted, as if Jennifer had moved to a different room. Actually, he's been really quiet since we got home. Won't tell me what they did in class today. Usually he talks my ear off about Bible study. He loves Mrs. Patterson. Jennifer, I need to ask you something, and I need you to stay calm. Did Tyler's clothes have any stains on them when you picked him up? Another pause, longer this time. What kind of stains? Blood, and maybe dirt or ash. Jesus Christ, wait, let me... Tyler. Jennifer's voice became muffled as if she'd covered the phone. Rachel could hear distant voices, then clearer. Oh my God. Rachel, his shirt. He's wearing a different shirt. He never said. He must have changed at church. Why would he change at church? Rachel's stomach dropped. So Tyler had been affected too, badly enough that he'd hidden the evidence. Jennifer, something happened at Bible study tonight. Something bad. I think Mrs. Patterson did something to the kids. What are you talking about? Mrs. Patterson. No, she's been teaching forever. She's wonderful with kids. She made them kill a bird. The words felt surreal coming out of Rachel's mouth. She told them it was about biblical sacrifice and she made them hold a dove while she cut it, and then she burned it and made them breathe in the smoke. Silence on the other end. Then, in a voice barely above a whisper, Tyler's been coughing since we got home. He said his throat hurt. I'm calling the police, Rachel said. I know it sounds crazy, but Lily's dress is covered in blood and she's traumatized and I don't know what else to do. I'm coming over, Jennifer said. Give me 10 minutes. Don't call yet. Let me talk to Tyler first, make sure our stories match up. If we're going to accuse someone like Mrs. Patterson, we need to be absolutely certain. Before Rachel could respond, she heard a splash from the bathroom, followed by Lily's voice. Mommy? I have to go, Rachel said. Come over. But I'm calling Jennifer tonight, I'm not waiting. She ended the call and hurried back into the bathroom. Lily was standing in the tub, water dripping from her small body, her eyes wide with fresh panic. I can still smell it, Mommy. The smoke smell. It's in my nose. I can't get it out. Rachel wrapped her daughter in a large towel and held her close, feeling Lily tremble against her. The lavender scent of the bubble bath should have masked any other smell, but Rachel understood. Some things couldn't be washed away with soap and water. Some things lived in memory, in the space behind closed eyes, in the sudden panic of a familiar smell or sound. She carried Lily to her bedroom and helped her into clean pajamas, the soft cotton ones with the stars and moons that Lily had picked out herself at Target. As Rachel brushed Lily's damp hair, trying to work through it gently despite her own shaking hands, she heard a car door slam outside. Through the window, she could see Jennifer Chen hurrying up the walkway, her face pale in the porch light. Behind her, moving more slowly, was Tyler, his shoulders hunched, his hands shoved deep in his pockets. Rachel settled Lily on the couch with her favorite stuffed rabbit and went to answer the door. The moment she opened it, Jennifer pushed past her, her eyes searching. Where's Lily? Is she okay? In the living room. Tyler can go sit with her if you think. But Jennifer was already moving, and Tyler followed, his eyes fixed on the floor just like Lily's had been. Rachel closed the door and followed them, arriving just as Tyler sat down on the opposite end of the couch from Lily, leaving a careful distance between them. The two children looked at each other and something passed between them. Recognition. Shared knowledge of something the adults couldn't fully understand. Then, simultaneously, they both started crying. Not the loud, dramatic tears of scraped knees or broken toys, but the silent, devastating tears of children who've been made to carry something too heavy for their small shoulders. Jennifer sank to her knees in front of Tyler, her hands on his face. Baby, tell me what happened, please. Tell Mommy what Mrs. Patterson did. Tyler's words came out in hiccuping gasps. She said we were special. She said we were old enough to learn the real lessons. She sent the little kids away with Miss Sarah to play games. He looked at Lily, then back at his mother. She had a knife, Mom. A real knife. She said it was the same kind they used in the temple. Rachel felt the room spin. She grabbed the back of the armchair to steady herself. A knife. Mrs. Patterson had brought a knife into a church basement and used it in front of children. On an animal. With children present. Participating. Did she threaten you with it? Rachel heard herself ask. Did she say she would hurt you if you told? Both children shook their heads. She said we'd understand when we were older, Lily said. She said this was real Christianity, not the watered-down version we learn in Sunday school. She said our parents wouldn't understand because they'd forgotten what faith really meant. Jennifer looked at Rachel, and Rachel saw her own horror reflected back. This wasn't just poor judgment. This was deliberate manipulation. Mrs. Patterson had intentionally isolated these children, had fed them a narrative that would make them reluctant to tell their parents, had created a secret that would divide them from the adults who should have been protecting them. Show me the shirt, Rachel said to Tyler. The one you were wearing at church. Tyler looked at his mother, who nodded. He pulled a balled-up t-shirt from his jacket pocket. It was navy blue, which had probably hidden the stains better than Lily's light-colored dress. But when Jennifer unfolded it under the living room lamp, the dark spots were visible. Blood had soaked into the collar and splattered across the chest. There were also streaks that looked like ash, gray and smeared. He changed in the bathroom at church, Jennifer said, her voice hollow. He told me he spilled juice on himself. I didn't think to question it. Why would I? He's 7 years old. Why would I imagine? Her voice broke. Rachel pulled out her phone. Her hands were steady now, steadied by purpose and fury. She dialed 911 and waited for the dispatcher to answer. 911. What's your emergency? My name is Rachel Morrison. I need to report child abuse at Riverside Community Church. The children's Bible study teacher made my daughter and another child participate in killing an animal tonight. They're traumatized, and I need someone to come take a statement. There was a pause on the other end. Ma'am, you're saying an animal was killed at a church? A dove. The teacher, Mrs. Patterson, brought it in a cage and used a knife to kill it as part of what she called a lesson on biblical sacrifice. She made 2 7-year-old children hold the bird while she did it. Then she burned the body and made them inhale the smoke. Rachel's voice was shaking now, but she pushed on. My daughter's dress is covered in blood. The other child changed his shirt at church to hide it. They've both been crying for the past hour. This woman traumatized these kids on purpose. Okay, ma'am. I'm going to send an officer to your location. What's your address? Rachel gave it, along with her phone number and the address of Riverside Community Church. The dispatcher asked more questions, about physical injuries, about whether Mrs. Patterson was still at the church, about how many other children had been present. Rachel answered as best she could, her eyes on Lily and Tyler, who had moved closer together on the couch and were now holding hands, united in their shared trauma. When Rachel finally ended the call, Jennifer was pacing the living room, her phone pressed to her ear. Yes, Pastor Williams. I know it's late, but this is urgent. We need to talk about Mrs. Patterson and what happened in Bible study tonight. A pause. No, it can't wait until morning. Something happened to our children tonight in your church, in a program you oversee, and you need to hear about it now. Rachel could hear the tinny sound of Pastor Williams's voice through the phone, though she couldn't make out the words. Whatever he said made Jennifer's face flush with anger. I don't care if she's been with the church for 15 years, Jennifer snapped. I don't care if you've known her since you were a kid. She did something to Tyler and Lily tonight that has them both in tears, and the police are on their way. You can either talk to me now and hear what happened, or you can hear it from the officers. More tinny sounds, louder now, agitated. Then Jennifer said, Fine, we'll see you there, and ended the call. She looked at Rachel. He's going down to the church now to check the classroom. He doesn't believe us. He thinks there's been some kind of misunderstanding. Of course he doesn't believe us, Rachel said bitterly. Why would he? Mrs. Patterson is an institution. We're just hysterical mothers who don't understand proper biblical education. Jennifer's expression hardened. Let him find whatever's left in that classroom. Let him see the blood. Let him smell the smoke. Then we'll see how much of a misunderstanding he thinks this is. They sat in tense silence, both mothers keeping watch over their children, who had finally stopped crying but sat slumped against each other, exhausted by the emotional turmoil. 10 minutes passed, then 15. Rachel was about to call the non-emergency line to ask when the officer would arrive when headlights swept across the living room window. The police cruiser pulled into the driveway, and Rachel went to the door. The officer who emerged was young, maybe in her late 20s, with dark hair pulled back in a neat ponytail. Her nameplate read, Officer Martinez. "Mrs. Morrison?" she asked as she approached. "Yes. Thank you for coming. Please, come in." Rachel held the door wide, and Officer Martinez stepped inside, her eyes immediately going to the two children on the couch. "These are the children involved." Martinez pulled out a notepad. "I'm going to need to speak with them separately, if that's okay." "Standard procedure. But first, can you walk me through what you know?" Rachel started from the beginning, picking Lily up from Bible study, seeing the stains on her dress, the conversation in the car, and in the bathroom. Jennifer added Tyler's part of the story. Officer Martinez took notes, her expression growing more serious with each detail. "Do you have the clothing?" she asked. Rachel retrieved the yellow sundress from the bathroom, now wrapped in a plastic grocery bag. Jennifer handed over Tyler's balled-up t-shirt. Martinez examined both, her jaw tightening. "This is definitely blood," she said. "We'll need to have it tested to confirm it's animal blood. But yes." "Okay. And you said the teacher's name is Patterson?" "Helen Patterson," Jennifer supplied. "She's been teaching children's Bible study at Riverside Community Church for years." Martinez wrote this down. "I'm going to need to speak with the children individually, and then I'll head over to the church." "Do you have contact information for this, Mrs. Patterson?" "The church office would have it," Rachel said. "Pastor Williams is at the church right now. He's checking the classroom where it happened." "Good. That's good." Martinez closed her notepad. "Okay, can I speak with—" She glanced at her notes. "Lily first?" Rachel led Martinez and Lily to the kitchen, where they sat at the small dining table. Through the doorway, Rachel could see Jennifer sitting close to Tyler, whispering to him. Rachel wanted to stay with Lily, to advocate for her, to make sure she didn't have to relive the trauma more than necessary. But she also knew the officer needed to hear Lily's account without parental coaching. "I'll be right in the living room, baby," Rachel said, kissing Lily's forehead. "Officer Martinez just wants to hear about what happened today." Lily nodded but grabbed Rachel's hand before she could leave. "You're not mad at me?" "Oh, sweetheart, no. Never." Rachel knelt beside her chair. "You didn't do anything wrong. Do you understand that? Nothing that happened was your fault." "But I held it," Lily whispered. "I felt it die." Rachel pulled her daughter close, fighting back her own tears. "That's not your fault. Mrs. Patterson made you do that. She's the grown-up. She's the one who did something wrong." Officer Martinez gave them a moment before gently saying, "Mrs. Morrison, if you could wait in the other room. This won't take long." Rachel reluctantly released Lily and moved to the living room, where she stood by the doorway, close enough to hear if Lily became too distressed. She could hear the low murmur of Martinez's voice, patient and kind, and Lily's responses, soft and halting. 20 minutes later, Martinez emerged from the kitchen with Lily, who immediately ran to Rachel and buried her face in her mother's stomach. "She did really well," Martinez said quietly. "Very brave. Her account is consistent with what you told me. Now I'll speak with Tyler." The process repeated, Jennifer leading Tyler to the kitchen while Rachel held Lily on the couch. The little girl had started shaking again, and Rachel wrapped a throw blanket around her shoulders. "Do you want some water? Or maybe some crackers?" Lily shook her head. "I just want Daddy." "I know, baby. I'll call him again as soon as the police officer leaves, okay? He'll come home as soon as he can." Rachel stroked Lily's hair, the damp strands already starting to dry in soft waves. Her daughter's hair always dried in waves when she braided it. Rachel remembered braiding it that morning, Lily chattering about a book she'd been reading, asking if they could stop for ice cream after Bible study. Such ordinary concerns, such a normal day. How had it turned into this nightmare in just a few hours? When Tyler and Martinez returned, the boy looked even more drained than before. Jennifer gathered him into her arms, and he curled into her like he hadn't in years. Too old to seek comfort so openly, but too damaged tonight to care about pride. "I'm going to head over to the church now," Martinez said. "Someone will be in touch with both of you about next steps. In the meantime, if either child shows signs of physical distress, difficulty breathing, coughing that won't stop, anything like that, take them to the emergency room immediately. That smoke inhalation could be a problem." Rachel's blood ran cold. She hadn't even thought about that. What had been in that smoke? What chemicals had been released when Mrs. Patterson burned the bird's body? Had she poisoned the children along with traumatizing them? As if reading her mind, Martinez added, "The symptoms would have shown up by now if it was serious. But keep an eye out just to be safe. I'll be in touch." After she left, Rachel and Jennifer sat in silence for a moment, both processing the nightmare that had become their evening. Finally, Jennifer said, "We should call the other parents. Find out if their kids said anything." "Martinez has their information," Rachel said. "She'll follow up with them." "We can't just sit here." Jennifer's voice rose with frustration and fear. "We need to do something. We are doing something. We called the police. We're taking care of our kids." Rachel looked at Lily, who had fallen into an exhausted half-sleep against her side. "That's all we can do right now." Jennifer looked like she wanted to argue, but Tyler said, "Mom, I want to go home." And the fight went out of her. "Okay, baby. Okay." She stood, gathering their things. At the door, she turned back to Rachel. "Call me if you hear anything. Anytime, I don't care how late." "I will." "You too." After they left, Rachel finally called David. This time he answered on the second ring, his voice jovial, the sound of restaurant chatter in the background. "Hey, hun. Sorry I missed your call earlier. How did Bible study, David? You need to come home." Rachel's voice cracked, and all the emotion she'd been holding back came flooding out. "Something happened to Lily. She's okay physically, but something really bad happened at church, and I need you here." The background noise cut out immediately. She heard a door close. "What happened?" "What do you mean something happened? Is she hurt? Someone needs to tell me what the hell is going on." Rachel spun toward the voice. Standing in her living room doorway was Pastor Williams, his gray hair disheveled, his tie loosened. Behind him, visible through the still open front door, was Helen Patterson. "How did you get in here?" Rachel demanded, pulling Lily closer. On the phone, she could hear David's voice rising in alarm, asking what was happening. "Your door was unlocked," Pastor Williams said. "Rachel, I've been to the church. I've looked at the classroom. There's no blood. No evidence of any animal, no ashes. Whatever you think happened, quote." "What I think happened." Rachel's voice rose to a shout, and Lily jerked awake with a small cry. "Look at my daughter. Look at the state she's in. Mrs. Patterson, you tell him what you did. You tell him right now what you made these children do." Mrs. Patterson stepped forward, and Rachel instinctively moved back, putting herself between the older woman and Lily. But Mrs. Patterson's expression wasn't defensive or guilty. She looked concerned, almost pitying. "Rachel, dear, I don't know what Lily told you, but we didn't kill anything tonight. We watched a nature documentary about eagles hunting. It was quite graphic, I'll admit. Perhaps too much for some of the children. But there was no bird, no knife, no blood." "You're lying." But even as Rachel said it, doubt crept in. She looked down at Lily, who had pressed her face into Rachel's side, refusing to look at Mrs. Patterson. "Lily, tell them. Tell Pastor Williams what happened." Lily said nothing. Her small body had gone rigid, every muscle tensed. "The child is obviously confused," Mrs. Patterson said gently. "Children have such vivid imaginations at this age. They see something on a screen, and in their minds it becomes real. It's quite common." "No!" Rachel's mind raced. "No, there was blood on her dress. Real blood. Officer Martinez has the dress. She saw it. She's testing it. Old cranberry juice stains. Mrs. Patterson suggested. We had snacks during class. One of the cartons might have leaked. It wasn't juice, Rachel was shouting now, and Lily began to cry again. David, are you still there? Tell them I'm not crazy. But the line was dead. At some point during the confrontation, the call had dropped. Rachel looked at her phone screen, then back up at Pastor Williams and Mrs. Patterson, and she saw something flicker across Mrs. Patterson's face. Satisfaction. Calculation. There and gone so quickly that Rachel almost thought she'd imagined it. Where's the cage? Rachel demanded. Where's the metal bowl? If nothing happened, where are they? Rachel. Pastor Williams' voice was infuriatingly calm, the voice he used from the pulpit when discussing difficult subjects. I understand you're upset. I understand something has frightened your daughter. But accusing Helen of animal sacrifice, of traumatizing children, these are serious allegations. Extremely serious. The kind that could destroy a person's reputation and livelihood. Good, Rachel snapped. Because she destroyed my daughter's sense of safety. She manipulated her. She made her participate in something violent, and then told her not to tell her parents because we wouldn't understand. I never told the children not to tell their parents, Mrs. Patterson said, her voice still maddeningly gentle. In fact, I encouraged them to discuss what they learned. About predator and prey, about the food chain, about how nature red in tooth and claw reflects the fallen world we live in. Rachel wanted to scream. She wanted to grab Mrs. Patterson and shake her until the truth came out. But Lily was sobbing against her now, and Rachel's first priority had to be her daughter, not winning an argument with a woman who was clearly prepared to lie without conscience. Get out, Rachel said. Both of you. Get out of my house right now. Rachel, please, let's talk about this rationally, Pastor Williams began. Out! Rachel pointed to the door. Or I'm calling the police again and telling them you broke into my home. We didn't break in. The door was unlocked. I don't care. Leave. Now. Pastor Williams exchanged a glance with Mrs. Patterson, and they moved toward the door. But as Mrs. Patterson passed, she paused and looked directly at Lily. I hope you feel better soon, sweetheart. Perhaps next week we can talk about what really happened versus what you imagined happened. It's important to know the difference. The words were spoken kindly, but Rachel heard the threat underneath. Don't contradict my story. Don't insist on your version of events. Learn to doubt your own memory. The manipulation was so subtle, so perfectly calibrated to plant seeds of confusion in a child's mind, that Rachel felt sick. After they left, Rachel locked the door and checked every window in the house. Then she scooped up Lily and carried her to the master bedroom, something she hadn't done since Lily was a toddler having nightmares. She settled them both on the bed and dialed David's number again. This time he answered immediately. What the hell is happening? The call cut out and I've been trying to get through, but it kept going straight to voicemail. They cleaned up the evidence, Rachel said, and hearing herself say it out loud made it real in a way it hadn't been before. Mrs. Patterson and Pastor Williams. They came to the house. They said nothing happened. They said Lily imagined it all from watching a nature documentary. But David, I saw that dress. Jennifer saw Tyler's shirt. There was blood. Okay, slow down. She could hear David moving, the jingle of keys. I'm leaving now. I'll be home in 2.5 hours. Have you talked to the police? An officer was here. She took the dress for testing. But if Mrs. Patterson cleaned the classroom, if she got rid of the cage and the bird and everything else, then it's just our word against hers. And Tyler's word, David reminded her. There are 2 kids saying the same thing. That counts for something. Does it? Rachel looked down at Lily, who had finally cried herself to sleep, her face blotchy and swollen. Pastor Williams made it sound like I was the one causing problems, like I was putting ideas in Lily's head. Which is exactly what someone would say if they were covering up something bad. David's voice was firm, certain in a way that made Rachel want to cry with relief. He believed her. He believed Lily. Listen to me. We're going to figure this out. We're going to protect Lily. And if that woman did what you're saying she did, we're going to make sure she never teaches children again. I promise you. They talked for another 10 minutes, David asking questions, Rachel filling in details, both of them trying to make sense of the senseless. When they finally hung up, Rachel lay beside her sleeping daughter and stared at the ceiling, her mind churning. What if Martinez came back and said the tests showed cranberry juice, not blood? What if the other children had different stories, or no memory of anything unusual at all? What if this came down to two traumatized kids versus a beloved church institution with 15 years of pristine reputation? Rachel's phone buzzed. A text from Jennifer. Tyler just told me something else. Mrs. Patterson took pictures. She had her phone out and was taking pictures during the whole thing. She said it was for documentation. Rachel's heart began to pound. Pictures. If Mrs. Patterson had taken pictures, then there was evidence that couldn't be cleaned up or explained away. But why would she document it? Unless she was so confident in her justification for what she'd done that she thought the pictures proved her point rather than her guilt. Rachel texted back, "Did you tell Martinez?" Texting her now, Rachel set the phone down and looked at Lily again. Her daughter's face was peaceful in sleep, but Rachel knew the nightmares that were coming, knew the therapy sessions that lay ahead, knew the trust that had been shattered and would take years to rebuild, if it ever fully could be. The rage that had been building in Rachel's chest since she first saw those stains on Lily's dress crystallized into something harder, something almost cold in its clarity. Mrs. Patterson had hurt her child, had manipulated her, had tried to gaslight them both into doubting what they knew had happened, and Rachel was going to make sure there were consequences. Her phone rang. Martinez. Rachel answered on the first ring. "Mrs. Morrison, I'm at the church with Pastor Williams. He's shown me the classroom. I need to ask you something. Is it possible your daughter might have confused something she saw on a screen with real events? Children sometimes." "No," Rachel cut her off. "No, it's not possible." "Officer, there's something else. Jennifer Chen just told me that Mrs. Patterson took pictures during the incident, on her phone. She documented what she did." There was a long pause. "Pictures." "Yes." Tyler Chen told his mother that Mrs. Patterson had her phone out and was taking pictures. She said it was for documentation. "Hold on." Rachel could hear muffled voices, Martinez talking to someone. Then, clearer. "Mrs. Morrison, Pastor Williams is asking Mrs. Patterson about photos now. I'll call you back." The line went dead. Rachel held the phone against her chest and waited. 5 minutes crawled by. Then 10. Lily stirred beside her, mumbling something in her sleep. Rachel stroked her hair and whispered meaningless comfort words, the kind you say to soothe without expecting to be understood. When the phone finally rang again, Rachel grabbed it so quickly she nearly dropped it. "Hello? Mrs. Morrison, this is Officer Martinez. I need you to answer a question for me, and I need you to be completely honest." "Of course. Has your daughter ever had any psychological evaluations? Any history of anxiety or tendency toward fantasy?" Rachel's stomach sank. "No." "Why?" "Because Mrs. Patterson just showed me her phone. There are approximately 40 photos from tonight's Bible study session. They show the children watching a documentary on a laptop. They show the children having snacks. They show Mrs. Patterson reading to them from a Bible." Martinez paused. "Mrs. Morrison, there are no birds in any of these photos. No cages. No blood. Nothing to support what your daughter has described. That's impossible. I'm looking at the photos right now. Timestamps match up with when the class was happening. I'm sorry, but I'm not seeing any evidence of the incident you've described." Rachel felt like the floor had dropped out from under her. She deleted them. She must have deleted the others. Perhaps. Martinez didn't sound convinced. "But without any physical evidence, without any photos showing what you're alleging, and with Mrs. Patterson denying the whole thing, there's not much I can do here." "What about the blood? On Lily's dress? On Tyler's shirt?" "The lab results will take a few days." "But Mrs. Morrison, even if it is blood, even if it's bird blood, that doesn't prove Mrs. Patterson was involved. Kids pick up all kinds of things. Maybe there was a dead bird outside and they investigated it. Maybe—" "Stop." Rachel's voice was sharp. "Stop making excuses for her. My daughter is traumatized, Tyler is traumatized. They both told the same story. They both described specific details. This happened. I believe something happened that upset your daughter. I do. But I need proof of a crime, and right now, I don't have that. Martinez sighed. Look, I'm going to file a report. I'm going to note everything you've told me and everything the children said. If the blood tests come back as animal blood, we'll revisit this. But for tonight, there's nothing more I can do. After Martinez hung up, Rachel sat in the dark bedroom, feeling utterly defeated. Lily slept on beside her, unaware that the justice her mother had promised her was slipping away before it had even begun. Rachel picked up her phone and opened her text conversation with Jennifer. They're not going to do anything. No evidence. She showed Martinez pictures that don't show anything wrong. The reply came almost instantly. We can't let her get away with this. What choice do we have? I don't know, but there has to be something. Rachel didn't respond. She set the phone aside and gathered Lily closer, breathing in the clean scent of her daughter's lavender shampoo. Outside, the summer night had deepened, and the house creaked with settling sounds. Rachel listened to each small noise, alert for any hint of footsteps, any suggestion that Pastor Williams and Mrs. Patterson might return. She must have dozed eventually, because she jerked awake to the sound of gravel crunching in the driveway. The bedside clock read 11:40. Rachel carefully extricated herself from Lily's clinging arms and went to the window. David's SUV was pulling in, and relief flooded through her so intensely that her knees went weak. She met him at the door, and he pulled her into his arms without a word. Rachel finally let herself cry properly, all the fear and rage and helplessness pouring out in great shaking sobs. David held her and stroked her hair and murmured into her ear. And slowly Rachel felt some small piece of herself settle back into place. Where is she? David finally asked. Asleep in our bed? Rachel pulled back and wiped her eyes. David, they're not going to do anything. The police, I mean. There's no evidence. Mrs. Patterson cleaned everything up and showed the officer pictures that make it look like nothing happened. David's jaw clenched. Then we'll find another way. We'll get a lawyer. We'll sue the church. We'll make so much noise that they have to take this seriously. What if no one believes us? What if everyone thinks I'm just an overreactive mother who can't tell the difference between imagination and reality? Then they're idiots. David took Rachel's face in his hands. I believe you. I believe Lily. And we're going to fight this. Together. Okay? Rachel nodded, though she wasn't sure she believed him. Fighting meant resources they didn't have, time they couldn't spare, exposure that might hurt Lily even more. But what was the alternative? Let Mrs. Patterson continue teaching? Let her have access to other people's children? Let Lily believe that telling the truth didn't matter? They checked on Lily, still sleeping, then moved to the kitchen where David made coffee even though it was close to midnight. Rachel told him everything, every detail she could remember, and he listened without interrupting, his expression growing darker with each revelation. We need to document everything, he said when she finished. Write down exactly what Lily said, when she said it. Get Jennifer to do the same with Tyler. Gather any physical evidence we still have. If we're going to fight this, we need to be organized. They spent the next hour doing exactly that, Rachel writing out a timeline while David took pictures of the items they'd saved. Lily's ruined dress in its plastic bag, Tyler's stained shirt that Jennifer had given them. At one point, David's phone rang. Pastor Williams. David declined the call. He's called 4 times since I left Columbus, David said. I'm not talking to him without a lawyer present. At 2 a.m, they finally went to bed, David settling on Lily's other side so she was sandwiched between them. Rachel lay awake long after David's breathing had evened out into sleep, staring at the ceiling and replaying the evening over and over. She must have eventually slept, because she woke to morning light and the smell of pancakes. David was already up, and she could hear him moving around the kitchen. Lily was still asleep, curled in a tight ball, her thumb in her mouth again. Rachel's phone showed 7 missed calls and a dozen text messages. 3 were from Jennifer, providing updates about Tyler, who'd had nightmares all night. 2 were from numbers Rachel didn't recognize, and the rest were from Pastor Williams, each message more insistent than the last, asking her to call him, asking her to come to the church, telling her that they needed to resolve this misunderstanding. There was also a voicemail from Officer Martinez. Rachel's hand shook as she pressed play. "Mrs. Morrison, this is Officer Martinez calling with an update. The lab rushed the tests on the clothing you provided. The stains on your daughter's dress and on Tyler Chen's shirt are definitely blood. Animal blood, consistent with avian species. I'm reopening the investigation. I'll need to interview both children again, and I'll be seeking a warrant for Mrs. Patterson's phone records and any deleted files. Call me back as soon as you get this." Rachel's breath caught. Evidence. Real. Concrete evidence that something had happened. She stumbled out of bed and into the kitchen, where David was flipping pancakes. "The blood test," she said, her voice shaking. "It came back positive. Animal blood. Bird blood. Martinez is reopening the investigation." David set down the spatula and pulled out his phone. "I'm calling a lawyer. Right now. Before we do anything else, we're getting legal representation." The morning dissolved into a flurry of activity. David found a lawyer through a colleague's recommendation, a woman named Catherine Powell who specialized in cases involving religious institutions. She agreed to meet with them that afternoon. Rachel called Jennifer, who burst into tears of relief at the news about the blood test. Lily woke up around 9, groggy and disoriented, and refused to eat breakfast. At 11, Officer Martinez arrived with another officer, an older man named Detective Barnes. They needed to interview both children again, this time with more specific questions now that they knew the blood was real. Catherine Powell arrived just as they were setting up in the living room, her presence immediately making Rachel feel less alone, less vulnerable. The interviews took over an hour. Lily told her story again, and this time Barnes took notes on specific details. What type of knife had Mrs. Patterson used? What color was the bowl? How big was the cage? Things that could be verified or disproved. Tyler arrived with Jennifer midway through and gave his own account, which matched Lily's in all the important details. "Here's where we are," Barnes finally said, addressing all the adults. "We have physical evidence of bird blood on both children's clothing. We have consistent accounts from 2 witnesses. What we don't have is the bird, the cage, the knife, or any photos showing the incident. Mrs. Patterson denies everything and claims the children watched a nature documentary that they've conflated with reality." "But the blood," Rachel said. "How does she explain the blood? She can't, really." She suggested the children might have found an injured bird outside, but there's no evidence of that either. Barnes closed his notebook. "We've requested a warrant to search her home and her vehicle. If we find the cage or any other materials, we'll have enough to charge her. Without that, it's going to be difficult to prosecute." "What about the church?" David asked. "Can you search there?" "Already did. Found nothing. Either it was never there, or it was cleaned very thoroughly." Barnes stood. "We're doing everything we can. But I want to be honest with you. Even if we find evidence, even if we can charge her, cases like this are hard to prosecute. Defense attorneys will argue the children are unreliable witnesses. They'll bring in experts to talk about false memories and suggestibility. They'll paint Mrs. Patterson as a devoted teacher who would never hurt a child." "But she did hurt them," Jennifer said. "Look at them." Everyone looked at Lily and Tyler, sitting side by side on the couch. They hadn't spoken to each other, hadn't played, hadn't done anything but sit in traumatized silence. Tyler was picking at a scab on his elbow. Lily was staring at her hands. "I know," Barnes said quietly. "And we're going to do everything we can to hold her accountable. But you need to be prepared for the possibility that we won't be able to give you the outcome you want." After the police left, Catherine Powell stayed to discuss next steps. Civil suit against the church, and Mrs. Patterson personally, demanding they fire her and implement new oversight procedures. Going to the media if necessary to apply public pressure. "But think carefully about the media route," Powell cautioned. "Once this becomes public, Lily's name will be attached to it forever. It will follow her. Kids can be cruel. She might face bullying or skepticism." "Worse than what she's already facing?" Rachel asked bitterly. Different. Not necessarily worse, but different. They decided to hold off on any media involvement for now, to see if the criminal investigation yielded results. Powell drafted a letter to the church demanding Mrs. Patterson's immediate suspension pending the outcome of the investigation. She also filed a civil complaint, which would at least create a public record of the allegations. The next few days passed in a strange limbo. Lily refused to go to school, claiming stomach aches that Rachel knew were psychosomatic but treated as real anyway. Tyler returned to school, but came home early the first day after having a panic attack in class. The blood test results had leaked somehow, and other parents from Bible study began calling, some supportive, some skeptical, all demanding to know what had really happened. Rachel stopped answering calls from numbers she didn't recognize. She stopped checking social media after seeing a post from someone defending Mrs. Patterson as a godly woman being persecuted by troublemakers. She focused on Lily, on helping her daughter feel safe again, on rebuilding the trust that had been shattered. A week after the incident, Officer Martinez called with news. They'd executed the warrant on Mrs. Patterson's home and found nothing. No cage, no knife that matched Tyler's description, no metal bowl, no feathers or blood, nothing. She got rid of it all, Rachel said flatly. Maybe. Or maybe she never had it to begin with. Maybe she borrowed everything and returned it. Maybe someone else was involved who we haven't identified yet. Martinez sounded frustrated. We're still investigating. We've interviewed the other children who were there that night. Most of them remember being sent to another room with a different teacher. A few remember seeing the documentary Mrs. Patterson described. None of them remember a bird. Because they weren't there, Rachel said. Tyler and Lily told you. The other kids were sent away. It was just the two of them. I know. But it makes the case weaker, not having additional witnesses. After that call, Rachel made a decision. She drafted her own post for social media, carefully worded with Catherine Powell's input, detailing what had happened without naming Mrs. Patterson directly. She posted it on the community Facebook page and waited. The response was immediate and divided. Some parents expressed horror and support. Others accused Rachel of lying, of trying to destroy a good woman's reputation, of being vindictive because Lily had gotten in trouble at church or some other imagined slight. The comment section became a battleground, and Rachel stopped reading after the first dozen responses. But the post had its intended effect. 2 other parents came forward privately, messaging Rachel to say their children had mentioned strange lessons from Mrs. Patterson. Nothing as extreme as what happened to Lily and Tyler, but enough to establish a pattern. An 8-year-old who'd come home talking about how they used to kill lambs in the temple. A 6-year-old who'd been told that if God asked her to sacrifice something she loved, she should do it without question. Small things. Disturbing things. Things that parents had dismissed as awkward phrasing or taken out of context, but that now seemed potentially significant. Rachel forwarded all of it to Officer Martinez and to Catherine Powell. A pattern of behavior. Evidence that Mrs. Patterson's teaching methods were problematic even if they couldn't prove the specific incident with Lily and Tyler. The church, for its part, put Mrs. Patterson on paid administrative leave pending the investigation. Pastor Williams released a statement saying they took all allegations seriously and were cooperating fully with law enforcement. He also noted that Mrs. Patterson had served faithfully for 15 years with no previous complaints, a detail that Rachel knew was meant to cast doubt on her story. 2 weeks after the incident, Lily finally agreed to see the therapist Rachel had found, Dr. Chen, no relation to Tyler's family. The first session was rocky. Lily didn't want to talk about what had happened. She drew pictures instead, violent scribbles of red that Dr. Chen said were concerning, but not unexpected. By the third session, Lily was talking more, and Dr. Chen told Rachel privately that Lily was showing signs of PTSD. She's experiencing intrusive memories, hypervigilance, and avoidance behaviors, Dr. Chen explained. All consistent with trauma. The good news is that children are resilient. With proper support and therapy, she can recover. But it will take time. Time. Therapy. Lawyers. Court dates that might or might not happen. A community divided over whether to believe 2 7-year-olds or a beloved Sunday school teacher. Rachel felt exhausted by all of it, ground down by the constant stress and the weight of being both advocate and caretaker, but she kept going. Because Lily needed her to. Because giving up meant letting Mrs. Patterson win. Because somewhere in Rachel's heart, she believed that the truth mattered, that justice would eventually prevail, that good people wouldn't let this stand. On a Thursday afternoon 3 weeks after the incident, Catherine Powell called with news. The prosecutor has decided not to file charges, she said without preamble. Insufficient evidence. Rachel had known it was possible. Barnes had warned them, but hearing it still felt like a punch to the gut. What about the blood? What about the children's testimony? Not enough without physical evidence or additional witnesses. The prosecutor doesn't think they can get a conviction, so they're not going to try. Powell paused. But Rachel, we still have the civil case. We can still pursue this. Make them pay damages. Force policy changes. It's not the same as criminal charges, but it's something. Something. Rachel thought about the therapy bills piling up, about Lily's nightmares that still came several times a week, about the way her daughter flinched when they drove past the church. Something wasn't enough. But it was all they had. Okay, Rachel said. What do we need to do? The civil case moved forward slowly, grinding through depositions and motions. Mrs. Patterson's lawyer argued that the entire incident was fabricated, that Rachel had coached Lily, that the blood on the dress could have come from anywhere. The church's lawyer argued that even if something had happened, the church wasn't liable because they'd had no reason to suspect Mrs. Patterson would do anything inappropriate. Through it all, Rachel and David supported Lily as best they could. They celebrated small victories, a full night without nightmares, a successful play date with a friend, the day Lily finally asked to go back church, not Riverside Community, but a different church. Somewhere Mrs. Patterson had never been. They also supported Tyler and Jennifer, who were fighting their own battles. Jennifer had pulled Tyler from Riverside entirely and was homeschooling him while he worked through his own therapy. The two families grew close through shared trauma, understanding each other in ways other people couldn't. 6 months after the incident, the civil case went to mediation. Mrs. Patterson sat across a conference table from Rachel and Jennifer, her expression unreadable. Her lawyer made an offer, a settlement of $20,000 split between the two families, with no admission of wrongdoing. Take it, Catherine Powell advised. If we go to trial, you might get more. But you might get nothing. And Lily and Tyler would have to testify, would have to be cross-examined, would have to relive all of it in front of strangers. Rachel looked at Jennifer, who looked back with exhausted eyes. They'd fought for 6 months. They'd done everything they could. And their children were finally starting to heal. Was it worth tearing open those wounds for the chance at a better outcome? What happens to Mrs. Patterson? Jennifer asked. Does she keep teaching? The church has permanently removed her from all children's programming, Powell said. That was part of the settlement terms. She'll never teach children again at Riverside Community. But she could go to another church, Rachel said. Could do this to someone else's kids. Yes. Unfortunately, yes. Rachel thought about that. Thought about some other mother, some other little girl in a yellow dress, some other evening picking up her child and seeing blood. She couldn't stop it. Couldn't prevent Mrs. Patterson from finding new victims. All she could do was protect her own daughter and hope that somehow, someday, justice would catch up to Helen Patterson. We'll take the settlement, Rachel said finally. The money, when it came, felt meaningless. Blood money, in the most literal sense. Rachel and David put it in a college fund for Lily, along with a note explaining where it had come from and why. Someday, when Lily was old enough to understand, they would tell her the whole story. Tell her how they'd fought for her. Tell her that they'd done everything they could. A year after the incident, Lily was doing better. The nightmares had become rare. She'd returned to school and made new friends. She still saw Dr. Chen monthly, but the sessions were lighter now, more about maintaining progress than dealing with crisis. She'd started talking about becoming a veterinarian when she grew up, wanting to help animals. Rachel sometimes wondered if that choice was connected to the bird, to wanting to save creatures that couldn't save themselves. Tyler was recovering too, though more slowly. He'd developed anxiety that required medication, and he still struggled with trust issues. But he and Lily had formed a bond, a connection forged in shared trauma and mutual understanding. They got together once a month for playdates that were really informal therapy sessions where they could talk about their experience with someone who truly understood. Rachel and David stayed at their church, the new one, and slowly rebuilt their relationship with faith and community. It was different now. Rachel couldn't hear the word sacrifice without tensing. She couldn't see anyone in authority around children without a spike of anxiety. But she was working through it, just like Lily was. One evening, almost 18 months after that terrible June day, Rachel was tucking Lily into bed when her daughter said, "Mom, do you think Mrs. Patterson ever thinks about what she did to us?" Rachel sat on the edge of the bed, choosing her words carefully. "I don't know, baby. Maybe she tells herself it was justified. Maybe she really believes she didn't do anything wrong. Or maybe late at night, she thinks about you and Tyler and regrets it." "I hope she regrets it," Lily said fiercely. "I hope it keeps her up at night." Rachel smoothed Lily's hair back from her face. "You know what? Even if she never regrets it, even if she never admits what she did, you survived it. You're strong and brave and you're healing. That's what matters." But she never got in trouble. Not really. No, not really. Rachel wouldn't lie about that. Sometimes bad people don't get the punishment they deserve. Sometimes the world isn't fair. Then what's the point of telling the truth? It was the question Rachel had been asking herself for 18 months. The question that kept her up some nights, staring at the ceiling, wondering if they'd done the right thing. If putting Lily through all the interviews and depositions and stress had been worth it when Mrs. Patterson walked away essentially unpunished. "The point," Rachel said slowly, "is that you know the truth. I know it. Tyler and his mom know it. The other families who came forward know it. We all know what happened, and we believe you, and that matters. The truth matters even when it doesn't change the outcome we want. Because living with the truth is still better than living with a lie." Lily considered this. "I'm glad I told you. Even though nothing really happened to her, I'm glad you know what happened. I'm glad too, baby. And I'm proud of you. So proud." After Lily fell asleep, Rachel went downstairs where David was reading on the couch. She curled up next to him, and he put his arm around her. "Hard bedtime talk?" he asked. "She's processing, wondering if it was worth it." Rachel leaned her head on his shoulder. "Sometimes I wonder too." "It was worth it," David said firmly. "Because Lily knows we believe her. She knows we fought for her. She knows we'll always protect her as best we can. That's worth everything." Rachel thought about that, about the message they'd sent to their daughter through their actions, that her voice mattered, that her pain mattered, that adults should be held accountable when they hurt children, even if the system failed to do it properly. Those lessons, she realized, might be more valuable than any criminal conviction could have been. "Yeah," Rachel said softly. "You're right." They sat in comfortable silence, and Rachel thought about the journey they'd been on, the terror of that first evening, the rage and helplessness that had followed, the slow, grinding process of seeking justice, the disappointment of the prosecutor's decision, the small victories of therapy and healing, the gradual rebuilding of normal life. It hadn't been the ending she wanted. Mrs. Patterson hadn't been arrested, hadn't gone to trial, hadn't faced real consequences. But Lily had survived, had healed, had learned that her parents would fight for her no matter what. And maybe, in the end, that was the real victory. Not in what happened to Mrs. Patterson, but in what happened to Lily. In the resilience she'd found, in the strength she'd discovered, in the knowledge that she was loved and believed and protected. Outside, the summer evening was giving way to night. Somewhere, Mrs. Patterson was probably preparing for bed, maybe thinking about the past, maybe not. It didn't matter. What mattered was here, in this house, where a family had been broken and was slowly knitting itself back together, where a little girl who'd been forced to hold a dying bird was learning to dream about saving animals instead, where parents who'd called 911 in tears were learning to trust the world again, one day at a time. Rachel closed her eyes and let herself rest. David's steady heartbeat a reminder that they'd survived this. They were still here, still fighting, still loving. And that, in the end, was enough.